You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's next for Syracuse football? Where do we go from here, right? So the Orange are 6-3. I believe now they are 3-3 as well in the conference. You would have liked to see a win here. I'm checking the latest scores from around the ACC, and you know what sucks really more is if Syracuse had won this game, they could have maybe pulled off a miracle and gotten to the conference championship game. Miami lost. They lost at Georgia Tech. The upset happened there. Finally, Miami lost. They'd been playing with fire for so long, finally lost. So I think that's really the stinger here is that the miracle shot is gone. So what do? Well, again, you can't throw in the towel for the season. Can't do that, right? They're a bowl team. They've earned that right. Bowl team for the third consecutive year. I guess that's the silver lining to you is that you can't throw away the season. You got a winnable game at Cal. Then you got UConn at home to get potentially 8 wins if you can beat Cal. And then, of course, Miami to close the season, which apparently they're beatable. So that's what it really is going forward. You can't throw in the towel for the season. This is a first-year head coach. First-year coordinators as well with him. It's not their first time being coordinators, but it's their first time as a staff together. I don't love all the coaching decisions in this game. I think at times they didn't help out the offensive line. They should have stuck an extra blocker there, whether it was a tight end or LeQuint Allen in the backfield, right, to help the offensive line. I think on defense, the 3-3-5 against the run just does not work. Evidently, they don't have the personnel to do it. You needed to load up the box a little bit more. That being said, if they didn't load up the box and you don't have anyone back there, I think maybe every single play could have been an 80-yard touchdown. So I don't know if there was really a solution. But going forward, I alluded to this during this post-game show. Going forward, the transfer portal, high school recruiting, signing day is near as well. There are 3 priorities. 3, okay? Number 1, you got to figure out your quarterback. I love Kyle McCord. This is not against him, but here's the reality. This is his last year of eligibility. I'm not saying you got to sit him. Don't sit him. But going forward, and we'll discuss it later on in later episodes, but I figured I have to give it to you now because of the road ahead, right? You got to figure out the game's most important position for next season. Do you want to stick with someone on the roster right now? Do you want to use one of your 2 true freshman recruits you have right now? Do you want to go in the transfer portal and find a quarterback, right? That's priority number 1. You got to figure out the quarterback situation, okay? But that's like a free space. That's a free space. That's like you have a bingo card and you get that free space in the middle, okay? You got to figure out quarterback, bottom line, right? But now we know our number 2 and number 3 priorities are, and it's not 2-3. It's 1-2-2. 1-2-2, okay? Whatever order you want, doesn't matter. Offensive line, defensive line. Defensive line, offensive line. See, it doesn't matter. But the bottom line is that that's where you got to go in the portal and hopefully on signing day. You got to get the big fellas, right? You have to. Fadil Diggs, by the way, who was invisible in this one, is still your best defensive lineman, and he's gone. He has no more years of eligibility either. He's gone after this season. Hopefully, Syracuse football can bring in Javion Hilson, a 5-star edge rusher. But he's an edge rusher. He's an edge rusher. As much as of course I want him, but he's an edge rusher. Does he play along the defensive front? He does, but you need to figure out really in the trenches. I think more specifically for the offensive line, you need better tackles and just linemen in general. I'm not impressed with the tackle play, particularly in this game. So that's where our priorities have to be in the offseason, because pretty soon it's going to be the offseason for Syracuse football. Even when you're getting ready for a bowl game, it's effectively the offseason by that point anyway. Again, free space, quarterback. Got to figure that one out. We'll talk a lot about that in future podcasts for Syracuse football. What do we do? What are the options, right? But offensive line and defensive line, offensive line, I don't care. You have to figure that out. You got to get the big fellas up front. Because it's very hard to win games when you're giving up over 300 yards rushing. The fact that Syracuse at one point was leading this game 21-14 in the third quarter is a minor miracle in and of itself. They couldn't stop the run. And Kyle McCord was sacked 4 times. I told you 1,000 times, it might as well have been 10. He was pressured all game long. It's one of the reasons why they lost to Pitt, because Kyle McCord had no time. Again, it was his fault with all the interceptions, but Kyle McCord had no time either. Nobody got a passing grade in that one. The Stanford game, again, offensive line play wasn't very good in that one. Got to get better in the trenches. All right? That's just how it is. Is it the end of the world? No, it's not the end of the world. The sun will shine tomorrow. Hopefully it will shine tomorrow, right? Hopefully it's not a rainy day. That would suck. But they're 6-3. They're 500 in the conference. Hopefully they can bounce back next week at Cal. And then you're looking at an 8-win season. And I think before the year in totality, you would take an 8-win season. You would take it. It's a first-year head coach. It's a good building block going forward. But you know your priorities now in the offseason. That's the silver lining of the loss. You know your priorities. You already knew quarterback was going to be one, but now you know it's the trenches. Running back, wide receivers, tight ends, that's all cool and all. Corners, linebackers, the sexy positions, I don't care. Would I like them? Sure. Guess what? They got some good weapons. Doesn't really matter if you can't stop the run and you don't have an offensive line. All right. So that is it for this post-game reaction show. Syracuse loses 37-31 to Boston College.